I know a lot of friends who are in this position that you probably had people who reaffirmed that family unit and stuck through it, where you see in a very different context, what feels like a very different kind of divorce, a divorce that happens after the kids are out of the house again,
Mm,
right? Or in college, or maybe even and wait until they're out of college. And that seems to me like it has a fundamentally different character to it in the
mm,
impact that that would have on a family. I mean, for obvious
yeah.
reasons, but I'm curious for your reaction, having yourself thought so deeply about these family structure issues, both in your scholarship and, of course, because of your personal journey. What's your reaction to that and the advice you would give to your
Mm,
guy friends who had the
yeah.
conversation with you they did about weighing, their
Mm.
marriage and their family circumstance in the situation with kids versus, roll it forward another 15 years or 10 years and maybe it'd be a different story.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. That once the kids are adults and they're out of the house and they have some perspective, um, I think at that point, like yeah, I guess if you have my general stance is if you are just in a relationship, there's no kids involved, what have you. I'm kind of libertarian on that. That you're two adults, do what you want to do. But once you have kids, then I sort of lean into that more sort of social conservative stance of now it's not about you, it's about the kids. Um, and and then once the kids become adults and they're out of the house, then I kind of revert back to that libertarian stance of,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but the kids will learn to live with it, and you're not breaking up a home anymore, right? You're not breaking apart a family. You're just kind of, hey, telling your kids that we stuck it out for you. Maybe you should be grateful.
And there may be a certain phase of not even sticking it out, but there's a family unit that provides you a kind of fulfillment that's
Mm-hmm.
different than when you're in your late teens or early 20s, and which might be very different than when you're in your late 50s as well.
Yeah.
And it's a life stage question that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
may, if people see it that way, I don't know if the utilitarian version of this or the utility version of framing it this way is it might actually encourage more people to reframe the way they think about different phases of their life rather than
I
feeling
see.
like they're permanently um,
Yeah.
committing to
Trapped.
something that actually causes them to react negatively against it. I'm just trying to think about practical
Yeah.
ways of improving stable family
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see
formation,
it.
and
Like
it's
if
not a
it,
particularly conservative or traditional thing for me to say, but it's just a question of whether that might actually lead a lot of people to lead to fewer broken homes in the period where we care most about, which is when the kids are actually in the house.
yeah. No, no, no. Yeah. I'm all about that. The sort of pragmatic approach, and I cite studies all throughout my book about how really the critical years for children seems to be between birth and age 5 to age 7. That's sort of the most important period of a kid's life. That's sort of how they the template for all future relationships, and their kind of emotional wiring and all those kinds of things. I mean, those early years are critical. um and so, yeah, if there's a way to, the public awareness campaigns or something, like, wait till the kids are out of the house
Yeah.
before you divorce, something like that. They think it would
Or
be kind
just
of
just think
cheeky.
about it real hard
Yeah.
before you have the kids. All right, just before you have
Or that
kids,
too.
think about
Yeah.
it, and then after they do, you're in it through graduation, something like that. I'm only
Yeah.
half kidding.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting here, I just read this article in The Economist like 2 days ago, and it was really interesting. I'm still thinking about this, which was that, so I'm sure you're familiar with the ongoing decline in fertility in the
Yes,
U.S. There's this
big
kind of
issue,
fertility crisis.
big issue. Yeah,
So yeah, and one of the interesting things that this article in The Economist pointed out was that, if you break this down by sort of social class, if you look at college educated women, we all kind of, a lot of people have this view that the reason why women aren't having kids is because education sort of delays child rearing and so
right.
on. But the Economist article pointed out that there's only been a very slight drop in fertility rates among college educated women. It has declined, but only slightly. But if you look at non college educated women, the decline has been vast, and that actually accounts for most of the fertility decline. So, it used to be that, non college educated women tended to have a lot of kids, a lot of teenage pregnancies, children out of wedlock, so on and so forth. But that category of those women are actually having far fewer kids than they used to. And I think a big part of that now is because of this growing recognition that, marriage is still an ideal in a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
communities. A lot of women still want to get married, even if, over the last few decades they have had kids out of wedlock. They still are usually with the father when the child is conceived, and then usually after a couple of years, the relationship falls apart. But what I'm thinking is happening now is that, now that we've been through a couple of decades of these patterns, these women are starting to realize that, actually, the marriage isn't in the cards, even if you have the kid. And
Mm-hmm.
the hope was have the kid. Now you're with this guy, and maybe that'll turn into a marriage. They've learned that that's probably not going to happen, and so now they're just not having the kid. And so now in a lot of working class communities, young women aren't having as many kids as they used to. And I'm noticing this, that even when I was a teenager in Red Bluff, there were a lot of teen pregnancies, and I'm still in touch with a lot of people in that community. And yeah, the teen pregnancy rates are down, marriage rates are down, relationship formation, all these kinds of things. And so all of this is to say that I think the fertility crisis may actually be a marriage crisis in disguise. And
Huh.
that
Interesting.
if we focused more on the marriage issue, the fertility issue would take care of itself.
Meaning that because fewer people are choosing to have kids out of wedlock, the decline in
Yeah,
marriage is actually what's responsible for the fertility crisis.
that's my suspicion. Yeah,
Very interesting. And I think that the irony to that is that regardless of whether you're right or wrong about your hypothesis, you get two good
yeah,
things out of
yeah.
acting on it nonetheless, which
That's right.
is not a bad hedge to even be wrong on a hypothesis, and you could still get to the right place in the end.